For my next series of projects, I would like to have a usable computer with ISA expansion slots. So in this video, I'm going to build and fix a Pentium computer from all this pile of parts. These are the basic parts that we would find in any mid-90s PC computer. Sound blaster card, floppy drive, all the internal cables for the drives, and of course, the motherboard. That in this case, it's loaded with a Pentium at 133 MHz and 80 MB of RAM. It also has 4 ISA slots and 3 PCI, being one of the most versatile models of that era. I also have a couple of other expansion cards like USB and network, but most surely I'm not going to use them for this project. As a graphic card, I will use an S3 Birch DX PCI card. And another must-have device for a computer from the 90s is the CD-ROM, which will be this rare Polaroid recorder, although it's from the early 2000s. To make sure all works properly, first I will do a smoke test connecting all the basic parts to find out if there are some issues with the hardware. All these parts have been stored for many years, so it would not be strange to find some problems. The old motherboards like this one require an AT power supply. And as you can see, it uses a different connector type than the ATS. Both connectors look the same and most times are not numbered. So if you wonder in what order they must be connected, the right one is with the black cables in the middle. The floppy drive is a standard high-density 3.5-inch, and also I have a 6GB hard drive, which will be more than enough for all the software that I can actually run in this machine. Finally, I will use the old keyboard that I restored last year, as it has the appropriate connection. So that is the basic setup for now. Hopefully nothing will blow up. Let's turn it on and see what happens. At first sight, all seems to start properly, but for some reason part of the RAM memory is not detected, but that actually doesn't matter now. The other error I can see is this CMOS checksum error. I have to say that this was expected, as it happens when the battery of the motherboard is dead. The motherboard battery is used to keep the date and time running and save all the BIOS settings. So if I press continue, the system will run with the default values. The hard drive was auto-detected properly, but it won't start because there is no operating system yet. As I can see, a floppy drive comes set by default. I will try to start with a boot disk. I had multiple problems to boot from the disk. I thought first that the drive was not working properly, and later realized that the cable was broken. After using a NIP cable, I managed to boot from the floppy drive, but there was not much I could do because for some reason the BIOS thinks that it is a double density drive and most of the files could not be read. It may be a strange bug, as the config clearly says 1.4 MB on startup. Changing the BIOS settings will not make any difference, as the values can't be saved at all due to the failing battery. So, in order to use this motherboard, I will have to replace the battery. On most motherboards, this is an easy operation, but unfortunately, this model has the battery integrated into what is known as a Dallas chip. This element handles the computer clock and contains a battery to do so. And as you can imagine, it is impossible to replace just the battery. If it goes bad, we will have to replace the whole chip. And that's what we are going to do. It has been a few weeks, and I finally received a replacement for exactly that chip. I don't know if that's a new one, or just one that has been stored for many years, so I hope the battery inside is in working conditions. Replacing components from a motherboard is a tricky operation, and it requires some practice and the appropriate tools. It's very important to clean well the residual tin and to make sure all connections are well welded. It is very easy that some of the pins do not make good contact, which can produce unexpected effects. So, once the replacement is complete, it's time for testing again. This time I had a better setup, hoping that all will work as expected. So let's turn it on. As you can see, there is no checksum error anymore, which is a very good sign. I will go to the BIOS and set up the date, clock and main configuration that I was unable to save before, and I will boot again from the floppy drive. This time everything worked, and I can finally install a DOS version onto the hard drive. Next step is to install Windows 3.1 and all the sort of drivers that we will require. To complete the configuration, I also added the Sound Blaster 16 and the CD-ROM drive, and both work with no issues. So I'm quite happy with the results and the fact that all is working now. Of course, I will have to find an appropriate enclosure or frame for this PC, but other than this, it's ready for my next experiment. But that is going to be in another video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.